He kissed her, right there in front of me, like he was showing off a trophy, expecting me to crumble, to beg, to cry. I did not. I smiled instead, a calm, slow smile that felt colder than ice. Every eye in the room shifted to me, waiting for my reaction. But I held something in my hand that would change everything. Papers that would unravel his perfect little world. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying and beautiful at the same time. He had no idea that the moment he thought he won, I was already 2 steps ahead. My name is Clara, and I am 29 years old. I live in a small apartment in the city, the kind of place where the walls are thin and every laugh, every argument, every whispered secret feels louder than it should. I work as a graphic designer at a boutique studio. Long hours filled with clients who never appreciate the work behind the perfect logos and layouts. Life is predictable, safe, and comfortable, or so I thought, until him. His name is Michael. He is 32, charming on the surface, magnetic in a way that draws people in. He knows how to make a room feel alive, and he knows exactly which buttons to push to make people admire him, fear him, or envy him. And I loved him once. I loved him with everything I had, believing that our love was strong enough to withstand anything. I was wrong. Our relationship was a roller coaster from the start. He was attentive and romantic, the kind of partner who would leave little notes in your bag, send you flowers for no reason, make you feel like the most important person in the world. But there was another side to him, a shadow lurking beneath the charm. He was controlling, possessive, manipulative. Small comments that felt like jokes at first. You look prettier when you smile. For me, slowly turned into chains. I do not like it when you talk to him. Or why do you need to spend time with your friends? It was subtle, almost invisible, until it was undeniable. The breaking point came the day I saw the texts. Hidden, secretive, his phone glowing in the dark living room, messages from another woman. At first, I thought I must be imagining things. Maybe she was a coworker, a friend. But the messages grew bolder, flirty, intimate. And then the audacity struck me. Plans, dates, laughter meant to be ours, shared with someone else. Every corner of my heart shattered. I felt anger, disbelief, betrayal, but also something deeper. A cold, simmering determination that this would not break me completely. I remember that night clearly. The city lights bled through the curtains, throwing streaks of neon across our bedroom floor. Michael sat across from me, unaware that I had seen everything, unaware that I had started planning silently, methodically, for the moment when I would take back control. I felt my pulse hammering in my ears, a mix of rage and adrenaline and a strange sense of calm. He thought he had the upper hand. He thought I would cry, plead, beg him to stay. He had no idea. The life we had built together was filled with memories that were both sweet and poisoned now. Dinner dates, weekend getaways, lazy mornings, drinking coffee while watching the sunrise. Each memory was now a weapon I could wield in my mind. A reminder that the person I loved could also be the person who betrayed me so completely. And in that contradiction, I found my power. I realized that love had not been enough to keep him loyal, but intelligence. Patience and courage could dismantle him in ways he would never see coming. I want the audience to feel this with me. The betrayal, the disbelief, the quiet fury that simmers like a storm behind your eyes. The anticipation of justice that is not immediate, but inevitable. The kind of betrayal that leaves you frozen for a moment, unable to act, yet secretly plotting every move in your mind. This is where I was, standing in our living room, watching him laugh at a joke. I had not made pretending to be oblivious while my mind raced, calculating, imagining the exact moment when I would reclaim everything he thought he had taken from me. And that is where our story begins, not with revenge, but with realization. The realization that the person who humiliated me, the person who thought he could manipulate my emotions, had underestimated the most dangerous thing of all, a woman who refused to be broken. If you have ever been humiliated, betrayed, or made to feel powerless, this story is for you. Hit that like button, subscribe, and stay with me, because what happens next is a masterclass in patience, cunning, and justice served cold. By the end of this story, you will see exactly what it feels like to turn the tables when someone thinks they are untouchable. Trust me, you do not want to blink, because every second is building toward a moment that will leave you breathless. The days that followed were a storm I could not escape. Michael acted as if nothing had happened, laughing at jokes I no longer found funny, brushing against me with casual familiarity as if his betrayal had never touched me. Every glance from him, every careless smile, felt like a challenge, a taunt. He wanted to see me break. He wanted to see tears, desperation, the collapse of someone who once loved him blindly. I did not give him that satisfaction. I smiled when I had to, nodded when I had to, but inside a fire raged that he could not see, that he could not touch. At work, I distracted myself, immersing myself in designs and deadlines, but even there, he found ways to assert control. He called constantly, claiming he was worried, but I knew better. Each call, each message was a tether meant to pull me back into his orbit, to remind me that I was still under his influence. One night, he showed up at my apartment unannounced, leaning against the doorframe with that infuriating grin, like a predator testing the limits of his prey. He said nothing at first. He just watched me. I felt my heart race, my blood boil, and a part of me wanted to scream at him, to tell him he had gone too far, but I did not. I had learned that patience was more powerful than anger. Every social event became a theater of humiliation. At my best friend's birthday dinner, he arrived late, arm in arm with her, a woman whose presence alone seemed designed to provoke me. He kissed her lightly on the cheek, smiling at the room as if daring me to react. Gasps circled the table. My friends glanced at me, expecting tears or fury. I simply smiled and excused myself to the restroom, letting the tension build. Letting him imagine he had conquered me. Outside, in the quiet of the hallway, I pressed my forehead to the cold tile, heart hammering, mind racing with possibilities. He had underestimated my resolve. He had underestimated how far I was willing to go. At home, the games continued. He would leave subtle hints of his infidelity, a receipt on the kitchen counter, a lipstick-stained napkin, a casual comment dropped like a bomb. Each one designed to provoke, to destabilize me. And each one I cataloged, memorized, stored away for later. I noticed patterns, his arrogance, his predictability, his reliance on manipulation to control those around him. Every night I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, imagining scenarios where the power shifted, where he was left exposed and helpless. Every plan in my mind felt more vivid, more satisfying than any confrontation he could force in the present. Psychological warfare was relentless. He thrived on control, on the subtle erosion of my confidence. Friends began to comment on his behavior, hinting at their concern, but he smiled, charming, convincing, untouchable. I watched him with the same intensity that a chess player watches an opponent, predicting moves, calculating responses, waiting for the exact moment to strike. The more he believed he was untouchable, the more dangerous he became. And the more dangerous he became, the more precise my plans had to be. There was a moment I remember like a spark in the darkness. He leaned close, whispering in my ear, a mixture of seduction and condescension. "You will always love me," he said, "no matter what I do." The words should have hurt. They should have shattered me. Instead, I smiled, and something in me clicked. The realization was crystal clear. He believed he was the architect of our story. He believed he controlled the narrative. He had no idea that I had already begun rewriting it, line by line, scene by scene, preparing for the moment when he would finally realize that the game was over. Each day, each humiliation, each careless act of arrogance only fueled my determination. The storm inside me grew louder, and the quiet, simmering fire of revenge became a plan. He did not know it yet, but the scales were beginning to tip. And soon he would discover that the person he thought powerless had been orchestrating the undoing of his world all along. I remember the night I finally reached my breaking point. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional honk from the street below. Michael had gone out as he often did, leaving me alone with my thoughts, though I could still feel his presence in every corner of the room, the way he had rearranged the furniture to suit his preferences, the faint scent of his cologne lingering like an accusation. I sank into the couch, feeling the weight of everything he had done pressing down on me. Betrayal, humiliation, frustration, all of it condensed into a single tight knot in my chest. I thought about every smile I had forced, every time I had swallowed my anger so that he could feel the illusion of control. I thought about the lipstick-stained napkin, the casual texts, the way he had kissed her in front of me as if I were invisible. My hands shook, not with fear, but with the intensity of something darker, sharper, and more focused. Something had shifted inside me. I realized that I had spent so long reacting to him, allowing him to manipulate my emotions, that I had forgotten I could act. I could take control. I could reclaim my life and make him face the consequences of his arrogance. I closed my eyes and imagined the moment when the scales would tip. I pictured his smug expression dissolving into disbelief, confusion, fear. The thought made my pulse quicken. I could almost feel the cold satisfaction of justice, the release of tension that had coiled inside me for months. And in that moment, I understood that revenge was not about anger. It was about precision, patience, and timing. It was about taking the power he had stolen and turning it into a weapon that he could not defend against. I started making notes. Every misstep, every arrogance-fueled action of his life, cataloged and organized in my mind. I wrote down his routines, his habits, the little weaknesses that made him overconfident. Each detail became a piece of the puzzle I would assemble carefully. I've thought about the divorce papers hidden in my desk drawer, the silent, unassuming instruments of disruption that would shatter his carefully constructed image. I pictured handing them to him with a smile, the same smile I had practiced so many times in the mirror, calm and unshakable, while inside I felt a hurricane of vindication. The room seemed to close in around me as I plotted, but I welcomed it. The quiet hum of the refrigerator became a drumbeat, the apartment itself a stage where my plan would unfold. I rehearsed conversations, imagined his reactions, felt the fear, the confusion, the humiliation that would wash over him. Every imagined moment fueled me, sharpened my focus, made the path forward clearer. It was no longer about pain or betrayal. It was about justice, about proving that I was not a passive character in someone else's story. I would be the author, and he would finally understand the consequences of underestimating me. A knock at the door startled me, and I froze. My heart jumped as I realized it was probably him, testing, manipulating, checking if I had fallen apart. But I remained still, calm, letting the moment stretch, letting the anticipation build. That is when I knew that I had changed. The fear that had once gripped me had been replaced with clarity and purpose. I was no longer the woman he thought he could control. I was the storm he had never seen coming. By the time I sank back into the couch, the knot in my chest had transformed into a weapon. I was ready. I would act not recklessly, but with precision. Every insult, every betrayal, every humiliation would be repaid in a way he could not anticipate. He believed he held the power, but in reality, he had handed it to me all along. The night stretched on, quiet and expectant, and I smiled to myself. Soon, the world he had built on arrogance and manipulation would crumble, and I would watch, composed and victorious, as justice finally took its course. The morning I decided to move, the air felt different, sharper, heavier, like the world itself was holding its breath. Sunlight crept through the blinds in thin, golden stripes, cutting across the floor like warning lines. I stood in the kitchen with a cup of coffee growing cold in my hands, staring at the wall, already running through the plan again. Not rushed, not emotional, precise. This was no longer about what he had done. It was about what I was about to do. I started with silence. No arguments. No reactions. No visible shift in behavior. I became softer, quieter, easier. That was the first trap. Men like Michael trusted comfort. He trusted routine. He trusted the illusion that he had already won. I cooked his favorite meals. I laughed at his jokes. I listened when he spoke about himself, which was often. Each moment made him relax. Each moment made him careless. While he believed I was sinking, I was collecting evidence. Receipts left on the counter. Messages saved and backed up. Dates noted. Times recorded. I photographed everything with steady hands. My heart beat slow and deliberate. The sound of my phone camera clicking felt louder than it should have, like a countdown only I could hear. One piece of proof after another stacked into something solid, something undeniable. Then came the papers. I removed them from the drawer and laid them flat on the desk. Divorce documents. Clean, official. Final, I smoothed them with my fingertips, feeling their weight. Not physical weight. Power. Each page was a door closing behind me and a wall rising in front of him. I signed where my name belonged, slowly, deliberately, like sealing a contract with my future. He came home that evening late, smelling of perfume that was not mine. I did not ask questions. I only smiled. That confused him. I saw it in his eyes. Confusion was the first crack. He expected anger, tears, accusations. Instead, he received calm. Calm unsettled him more than rage ever could. The next step required an audience. I chose a place where he felt invincible, a social gathering. Mutual friends, laughter, warm lighting, the kind of room where people wore confidence like armor. I dressed carefully that night. Nothing dramatic, nothing aggressive, soft colors, clean lines. Control. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized the woman staring back at me. She was not broken. She was focused. He arrived with her on his arm. The woman he thought would be my undoing. The room shifted when they walked in. I felt the air tighten. Conversations paused. People watched. He wanted a reaction. He craved it. I gave him none. I smiled. A slow, steady smile that made his confidence flicker for the first time. My pulse stayed steady as I reached into my bag. The papers rested inside, crisp and silent. My fingers brushed against them, and the sensation grounded me. This was it. No hesitation, no fear, only control. When he leaned down and kissed her, it was theatrical, designed to wound, designed to humiliate. Gasps filled the space around us. Every eye turned toward me. I felt the weight of their expectations pressing against my back. Cry, scream, collapse. I stepped forward instead. The room went quiet as I held out the envelope. My hand did not shake. My voice did not tremble. "These are for you," I said. He looked confused, then irritated. He took them casually, like they were nothing, like I was nothing. He opened the envelope, still smiling, until the smile slipped. His eyes scanned the first page, then the second. The color drained from his face so quickly it was almost cinematic. Divorce finalized. Prepared, irreversible. The silence stretched, thick, heavy. I watched realization crawl across his expression, slow and painful. Power was shifting. Everyone could feel it. "What is this?" he asked, his voice suddenly smaller. "This is me choosing myself," I said quietly. The woman beside him stepped back. Confusion turned into discomfort. Then embarrassment, then fear. The audience was no longer on his side. They were watching him fall. For the first time, he had nothing to say. And I felt something inside me finally release. The room held its breath as Michael stared at the papers in his hands, his fingers trembling slightly, betraying the arrogance he had worn like armor for so long. Every guest around us could see it, the collapse of his carefully curated image. The woman he had flaunted by my side shifted uncomfortably, eyes darting as if searching for a way to escape the truth. He was exposed, vulnerable, human in a way he never allowed himself to be. and I finally was free to step fully into the power I had claimed for months in silence. I watched as his jaw tightened. He flipped the pages again and again, desperate for a mistake, a loophole, anything to undo the inevitability of the moment. There was none. Every signature, every official stamp, every word laid bare the truth. He had lost. And he had lost not because of fury, not because of confrontation, but because of patience, precision, and the refusal to be diminished. I felt my chest rise and fall with a slow, deep satisfaction, the kind that seeps into your bones, warming and liberating all at once. He looked up finally, eyes meeting mine. Confusion, bewilderment, anger. I let him see it all, and I smiled. Not a cruel smile, not a victorious smirk. A calm, unwavering smile that spoke of justice delivered and dignity reclaimed. Every person in the room shifted their gaze toward me. I could feel the collective recognition. This was not just a divorce. This was a reckoning, a lesson in underestimation. Michael stumbled over words, trying to reclaim authority, trying to assert control that had slipped from his grasp months ago. His voice shook. "You cannot. How? This is impossible." Each syllable came out fragmented, halting. He was unprepared for the precision, for the quiet storm I had become. The very energy that had once simmered beneath my surface now radiated outward, and it was undeniable. I allowed myself to speak, softly, deliberately. "It is neither impossible nor sudden. It is exactly what happens when someone treats the people who love them as if they do not matter. This is the result of choices, repeated and calculated, and it is final." My words cut through the tension like glass, sharp and clear. Every guest turned slightly, sensing the shift. Whispers began, subtle but unmistakable. The room no longer held Michael's power. It held mine. He dropped the papers onto the nearest table as if their weight burned him. His face was pale, lips pressed into a thin line, hands shaking slightly. I could hear his breathing quicken. The energy in the room was electric. Every detail I had noticed, catalogued, and waited for now played out perfectly. His arrogance had built the stage for his own undoing, and I had been the quiet director, unseen until the perfect moment. I felt relief wash over me first, a tidal wave that loosened months of tension that had lodged in my chest. Then came triumph, sharp and exhilarating, as if every humiliating moment he had inflicted on me had been returned tenfold. Finally, validation. The quiet certainty that I had been right to trust my instincts, to remain calm, to plan with patience and precision. He stepped back, eyes scanning the room. Friends, acquaintances, even strangers, all regarded him differently now. Where once he had commanded attention, now he commanded pity. Humiliation is a heavy cloak, and it hung on him like a visible weight. I did not gloat. I did not laugh. I simply let the silence stretch, letting him feel the magnitude of what had just occurred. The moment lingered. Every heartbeat, every glance, every subtle shift in posture reinforced the reversal. The man who had kissed another woman in front of me, the man who had thought he held the power, was now diminished. And I, calm, composed, and resolute, stood at the center of the room, finally unbroken, finally untouchable. For the first time in months, I exhaled fully, letting my shoulders drop, letting my chest expand with air that felt impossibly light. The storm inside me had passed. The world was quiet, but it was my quiet. The revenge was complete. The justice was mine. And for the first time, I felt entirely, indisputably free. The house was quiet that night, though the echoes of earlier events lingered like the faint hum of a distant storm. I sank into my favorite chair, the one by the window, and looked out at the city lights. They flickered softly, indifferent to the human dramas that unfolded beneath them, but I felt a sense of clarity I had not known in months. Everything that had weighed me down, the humiliation, the betrayal, the quiet anger that had simmered just beneath the surface had been released. I had acted. I had reclaimed myself. And in that reclamation, I found peace. I thought about Michael, about the man who had seemed untouchable, who had believed that charisma and arrogance could shield him from consequence. He had underestimated patience, precision, and the quiet strength of someone who refused to be broken. There was a lesson there, not only for him, but for me. Power is not given. Power is taken, earned, and defended with clarity of mind and purpose of heart. I had learned that the most dangerous and satisfying form of justice is calculated, deliberate, and undeniable. In the quiet of that evening, I reflected on the months of careful observation, planning, and execution. It was not easy. Every day required restraint. Every encounter required composure. But it taught me resilience. It taught me that dignity is not just an abstract ideal, it is a form of armor. And it taught me that revenge, when justified and executed with intelligence, can be profoundly empowering. I felt a surge of pride, not in the act itself, but in the woman who had endured, observed, and acted with unwavering purpose. I realized that the real victory was not in seeing him fall, though that had been undeniably satisfying. The real victory was in seeing myself rise. I no longer feared confrontation, no longer allowed humiliation to define me. I had rewritten my story, and it was mine entirely. I could see clearly now that the strength I had cultivated in the shadows, the patient, calculating strength, was a gift to myself. It would guide me through every challenge, every betrayal, every moment when someone tried to diminish me again. The city outside shimmered with possibility. I felt light, almost weightless, as if the months of tension had been a storm passing over me, leaving the air crisp and clean. I smiled to myself, thinking about the future. I would move forward, cautious but confident, carrying the lessons of this chapter with me. I would trust my instincts. I would act with purpose. I would never again allow someone else to write the story of my life. And in that quiet reflection, I understood something vital. Revenge is not the goal. Clarity and self-respect are. The act itself is just a confirmation that you will not be passive in the face of betrayal. I had found justice, yes, but more importantly, I had found myself. I had discovered a core of strength I did not know existed, a calm certainty that no one could take away. I poured myself a cup of tea and let the warmth seep into my hands, a grounding comfort after the storm of emotion. The house smelled faintly of the candle I had lit earlier, a soft, calming scent that reminded me that I was still present in the world, that I was alive and whole. I leaned back, closed my eyes, and let the satisfaction settle in. Everything had its place now. The past was settled, the future was mine. And for the first time in a long time, I felt entirely at peace. If this story resonated with you, hit the like button, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more stories that prove the strength of patience, determination, and justice served with precision. Every story here reminds us that the most powerful victories are the ones that reclaim our dignity and our control. Stay with us, because there is always more to witness, more to learn, and more to feel.